Creating an invoice from a sales order is the final step in the sales order process. To go ahead and do this, we're going to go to Processes, Sales, and then Sales Order, Edit, Fill, Invoice. This screen is going to show us all by default. Our default filter is set to show us all open orders, all partially filled orders, any back orders, and any filled orders. So we can see ones that are invoiced. So once you do invoice an order, it doesn't go away, but our default filter is just not set to show those invoiced orders. I could either click on the current filter and just look at invoiced orders, and then it would show me anything that was previously invoiced. Or I could choose the current filter that sets it to no filter, and I would see everything. Open orders, invoiced orders, filled orders, partially filled orders, I would see them all there. Okay, I'm going to go back to my default filter. And when you're invoicing sales orders, you can either do it one sales order at a time, or you can go ahead and do it with multiple orders. Okay, now if you're doing it with one order at a time, you could either go ahead and invoice an already filled order, or as part of the process of filling an order, so let me go to one of my open orders down here. As part of the process of filling an order, you can go ahead and invoice it at that time. So either way, you would go ahead and either edit or go ahead. So if you've already filled the order, you can highlight it and click Create Invoices. If you have not filled the order yet, you can go ahead and click Fill Single Order. And then this will bring up the screen to go ahead and fill the order, and we'll select the quantities which were shipped. Now, if there is a difference between what was ordered and what was shipped, we can go ahead and make that change. And when that invoice is created, then it'll also create a back order. So we'll see the back order get created for this order number 12. Okay, so before I hit save on that, there is a button on here to create the invoice. So for the items that have been shipped, I can go ahead and create this invoice. It's going to ask me for the invoice date. We can change that. If it's not going to be the current date, we can go ahead and change that, but it should default to the current date. It's going to default to your next invoice number. So unless you're using multiple sequences for invoices, this should be the next invoice number. If you need to choose a different number, you could click on the icon at the end and then choose a different sequence if you have one. If any of these invoices are going to be printed, you're going to go ahead and click that you're going to print the invoices, and you'll choose which form those are going to default to. So now this should be coming through from your preferences as to what your default is, and then also the default printer that you're going to be sending those to that was selected in preferences should come up over here, and how many copies you've said you want of each one of those. Okay, now I have mine going to a PDF file, but I'm not actually going to print mine anyway. So I'm going to just go ahead and click OK there. So I'm going to take that off of there. So you could either print invoices or packing slips. So you could also choose the same thing for packing slips. You could choose that you want to print them, choose which form they're going to go on, and then which printer again. Okay. If any of your vendors are marked to email the invoices, you would also check this box. It would tell you what form is going to be attached to the email. And then if in preferences you had set up a default email subject line and message, you would click on this button here and it would show then who these emails are going to come from. Okay, actually that's at the 2. who they're going to come from in the from box, the default message that you want on those, like new invoices attached or something like that. And then if you wanted so that would be the default subject. And then if you wanted an additional message as part of those emails, you could put that in. Now that should default forward from your preferences if you've set that up in preferences. I'm not going to go ahead and email this invoice out, so I'm just going to uncheck that. The box to shipped quantity only means that what do you want to see on the invoice? Do you want to see only the shipped quantities, or do you also want to include a line that shows what's been back ordered? Okay, if you need to recalculate taxes between the sales order and the invoice, you can have the system go ahead and recalculate the taxes. And that would be especially important if you've had some sort of a tax rate change from the time that between the time that the sales order was created and the invoice was created. So you can check whatever boxes you need to for that, and then go ahead and click create, and it'll go ahead and create the invoice. And then I can go ahead and save that sales order. So it's going to give me a verification that this invoice was created. And since I changed the quantity on this invoice, it's also going ahead and creating that back order. So we're going to see that back order right here that was created from order number 12. But then we also should be able to see an invoice that was created for Alpine Bait and Tackle if we were to go to the invoices. Okay, now I might have multiple invoices for them, but here is one for today, the date that we had on the invoice for Alpine Bait and Tackle. Okay, so that one was invoiced. Right, let me go back to the default there. So let me go back to my default so that we're showing all of our open, filled, partially filled orders here. Okay, the second method of being able to go ahead and invoice these orders is to select multiple orders at the same time. Now, of course, you can only invoice those orders that are filled or partially filled. So, we have a whole bunch of different filters over here, but we don't have one that is just for filled and partially filled orders. So what you can do is you can go to the filter tab, and you can go down here to the status, and we could say we don't want to see the open orders, change the filter, and click apply. Now I'm not saving that as my default filter, but for right now, I just want to filter this list for my filled and partially filled orders. Okay, now if I want to invoice those, I could either highlight certain ones or I could highlight all of them. And I could go ahead and come down here to the bottom, and there's a button that says create invoice. So if I go ahead and click the create invoice button, it'll ask me for the date of those invoices. So I can go ahead and select the date, what the next invoice number was. And then the same options that we had when we were going ahead and creating a single invoice, we have for these multiple invoices. So if I'm printing any of them, I could go ahead and say that I'm printing them, verify that it's the right form and right printer. If I'm emailing any of them, I would mark the email, verify the right form is being attached to those emails. Then I could also verify any default message and subject line that I had put on in preferences for that. And I can, if I wanted to print packing slips, I can go ahead and print the packing slips. Again, I could verify the form and the printer that that's going to. Now, I'm not going to print or email any of mine, but I wanted to show you that you could do that at this point. Again, if any of those were creating or had a back order associated with them, you can determine whether or not you want to go ahead and select this option for creating the invoices that show shipped filled items only and don't show a back order if a line on a sales order was partially filled. Okay, so we can only show the shipped quantity only on that. And we can also go ahead and recalculate taxes if we needed to. We can go ahead and click create at that point, and it'll go ahead and create those invoices. So it should go ahead and create 4 invoices for that. And we'll let it finish there. And then I'm going to go back to my default filter so that you can see that once we go ahead and do that, those are no longer going to show using my default filter, which is usually just showing me my open, my filled, and my partially filled ones. Now, I have got a number of back orders that got created because some of those were only partially filled. So I've got a number of back orders that got created after that occurred. Okay, so this is none of my invoiced ones though. However, if I do want to see my invoiced ones, I can go ahead and either come up here and select no filter, or I could go ahead and go down to the bottom and say that I just want to see the invoiced orders. And when I go ahead and say that I want to just see the invoiced orders, you'll see that they're all out here, but I can't make any changes to them at this point. Okay, what I can do though is I can highlight one of them and I could click the copy button on the bottom, and that would allow me to copy one and make it a new sales order or a quote. Now, after these are invoiced, you should be able to see those invoices when you go to run a either a report or in transaction search for those customers. So if I was to go to transaction search, and I just pulled up the date of today. So we'll just come here and we'll go ahead and change the date range to just today. Oops, I accidentally clicked on the wrong thing. So we'll just change it to today, and then click search, and you'll see all of the invoices that were created today. Now I might have done this, I might have had multiple invoices created earlier in the day, but these are all the customer invoices that were created through those processes. And if I were to double click on one of them, we would be able to go in and actually see the invoice and make any editing changes we needed to that invoice up until the point where there is money received on that invoice. So if there had been a deposit on the customer deposit, and that deposit had been applied to the sales order, it would have automatically been applied to the invoice here. So it may already have payments associated with it. So if an order has a deposit applied, the deposit will be applied to the invoice, thus lowering the net due or eliminating the amount due. Any amount of the original deposit not used will continue to be a deposit available to apply to other orders and invoices. Invoicing deducts, so if you happen to have our inventory module, the invoicing process deducts quantities shipped from inventory on hand and from assigned quantities. Any back order quantities will continue to affect assigned quantities only. Okay, when you go ahead and do the invoicing, commissions are also calculated and copied to customer invoices on a pro rata basis. Okay, both invoices and packing slips can be created from this process, as we were able to see. Now you can also reprint them at a later time by going ahead and going to processes, sales, and there is the ability to print and email invoices at a later time. So just like I showed those invoices from a transaction search screen, you should be able to see them and edit them from reports as well. So if I were to go to transaction reports here and open up sales and accounts receivable, I could either go to like a customer aging report or a customer ledger report or something like that. And I would be able to see those invoices there, and it would allow me to go ahead. So here's my accounts receivable aging or my open invoices report, and I would be able to see those invoices. So I'm just going to go ahead and click preview on this, and we'll be able to see those invoices that were created for all of those different customers. So here's all my different open invoices. And if we go ahead and we'll let that load here. Okay, so here are my different invoices for these customers. And as you can see, the ones that we created today are there. And if you have the view on your reports set to interactive, you should be able to double click on one of those and go in and edit the invoices that just got created.